I drove 60 miles to surprise my son's family for Christmas. I had the backseat packed with homemade food and gifts for everyone. What I found stopped me cold. My grandson Santiago was standing outside in the dark, in shorts and a t-shirt, in 5 degrees Fahrenheit weather. His lips were purple. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely speak. "Grandpa, please don't come in," he whispered. "It'll only get worse." I pulled off my coat and wrapped it around his shoulders. The kid was ice cold. "How long have you been out here, son?" "Since 5:30, he stammered, teeth chattering. It was 7 p.m. 2 hours. My 18-year-old grandson had been standing outside in below freezing temperatures for 2 hours. And through the door, I could hear laughter, Christmas music, the smell of hot food drifting out from underneath it. "And your dad?" Santiago looked at the ground. "He's inside with Diana and the kids." Of course he was. My son, Javier, construction company manager, good salary, nice life, was sitting warm at the holiday table while his own son froze on the front step, the son he once promised he would always protect. "What did you do that was so terrible?" I asked. Santiago seemed to shrink. "I forgot to turn off the oven. The fish burned. Diana said I ruined Christmas, that I needed to stand out here and think about what I did." I looked at my grandson. 6 months ago, when I saw him in July, he'd seemed thin and sad. He told me it was just stress from college. I believed him. Now I understood why he never answered my calls, why he always had an excuse not to visit. "There's a difference," I said, feeling the blood rising in my chest, "between punishing a kid and leaving him to freeze to death on Christmas Eve." I put my hand on the door handle. It wasn't locked. Why would it be? The whole point of the punishment was for Santiago to stand out there watching the celebration through the window, smelling the food, hearing the laughter. What kind of twisted cruelty is that? I pushed the door open with my foot. Inside was a picture-perfect Christmas scene. Javier at the head of the table in the blue dress shirt I gave him last year. Diana to his right in a red dress. The 2 little kids, 5 and 3, in matching holiday outfits. The table loaded with food. Christmas tree in the corner glittering with wrapped gifts, a holiday movie playing on TV, a perfect Christmas card, except the missing family member was standing barefoot behind me on the frozen concrete. Everyone froze. Javier halfway through a bite, Diana with her wine glass suspended in mid-air, the kids with food on their faces. The silence was so thick I could have cut it. "You people are out of your minds," I said. Diana recovered fast. I'll give her that. She set down her glass and stood up with a bright smile. "What a surprise, we didn't know you were coming. If you'd told us, we would have—" "Prepared what?" I cut her off without moving from the doorway. "A jacket for the kid you've had freezing outside for 2 hours? Her smile stopped like someone hit pause on a remote. Javier set down his food. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to spend Christmas with my family," I said, gesturing behind me without turning around. "And I found my grandson standing outside in shorts at 5 degrees below zero. You want to explain that? Or should I just guess?" Diana shifted into a different gear, smooth, practiced, the voice she probably used at neighborhood meetings. "Oh, it's not that dramatic. Santiago forgot to turn off the oven. The Christmas fish burned. $100 of food. I told him to go outside and think about his irresponsibility." She waved her hand like she was shooing a fly. "Besides, you know how teenagers are. They exaggerate everything. I'm sure he wasn't that cold." I turned around. Santiago was still standing in the doorway, wrapped in my coat, trembling. His lips were still purple. "Come here, son," I said quietly. "Show your father your hands." Santiago stepped forward slowly, the way a person walks when they expect the ground to collapse under them. He held out his hands. They were red, nearly purple at the fingertips, shaking uncontrollably. Javier went pale. "Santiago, I didn't know that." "Of course you knew." I kept my voice level. "You were inside. You knew perfectly well your son was out there." Diana stepped in, harder now. "With all due respect, this is our family and our way of raising Santiago. You don't have the right to come into our home and judge us." Our home. There it was. I smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile a man puts on when he knows something that nobody else in the room knows yet, and he's just waiting for the right moment to say it. "Interesting," I said. "Very interesting." Javier looked at me nervously. He knew exactly why I was smiling like that. I looked past Diana. The little kids' plates were full. There was an empty spot beside Javier, but the plate was upside down. They hadn't even set a place for Santiago at the table. Not for Christmas Eve dinner, not even a plate. "Santiago," I said, without taking my eyes off Diana, "go to your room and pack what you need. Clothes, school stuff, everything important." Diana shot to her feet. "He's not going anywhere. You can't do that. He's a minor. That's kidnapping." I looked at my grandson. "How old are you, son?" 18, Grandpa," he answered quietly. 18, I repeated for Diana's benefit. "Legal adult. He can go wherever he wants, and if you prefer, we can call the police right now, explain the situation, and I'll show them the photos I just took outside, time-stamped with the temperature visible. We can see who ends up in more trouble." Diana opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Javier wouldn't look at me. "Our home," she said again. "We decide what happens here. If you interfere with our family, you'll regret it." "Our home," she kept saying that. "Funny you should mention that," I said slowly. "It's not your home. It's not even Javier's home. Ask your husband. Ask him what he signed 10 years ago when I lent it to him." The look on Diana's face in that moment, confusion, then understanding, then pure panic, was something I'll remember for a long time. "Javier," she said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "What is he talking about?" My son closed his eyes. Santiago came down the stairs with a backpack over his shoulder. "Ready, Grandpa?" "Perfect, let's go." I walked to the door. Diana shouted behind us, "You can't leave like this. I'll call the police. I'll say you kidnapped him." I stopped at the doorway and turned around one last time. "Merry Christmas, Diana. Enjoy the house," I said, putting particular emphasis on the "while you still can." We walked out. I closed the door behind us. In the car, heater on full blast, Santiago finally let himself cry. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," he sobbed. "I ruined your Christmas." "You didn't ruin anything, son," I said, starting the engine. "You gave me the best Christmas gift I could ask for." "What's that?" "The truth, and the chance to make things right." On the drive home, he told me everything. 2 years of it. 2 years of Diana treating him like a servant, like an inconvenience, like a reminder of Javier's first marriage that she hadn't signed up for. She gave him smaller portions than the little kids, told him he didn't deserve nice things because he wasn't her blood, made him clean the entire house while she watched TV. When he complained, she told Javier he was being disrespectful, and Javier always believed her. Every word landed like a hammer. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I tried, Grandpa, in July, remember? But you said Dad probably knew what he was doing, that I should respect his marriage." I had said that. God help me, I had said exactly that. "Forgive me, son. I should have listened." We got home around 10 p.m. My house was dark and cold, but it was mine. Nobody had done me any favors letting me live there. I ran Santiago a hot bath, and while he was in it, I made a phone call. "Richard, it's Frank Delgado. I know it's Christmas Eve. I'll pay double rate. I need to ask you about that property agreement we drew up 10 years ago, the one for the house in Monterey. How quickly can I revoke it?" The answer made me smile. Very quickly, as it turned out. For 35 years I've worked with wood. I've learned that there are fine woods and cheap woods. The fine ones, no matter how you cut or sand them, keep their character. The cheap ones splinter under the first pressure. My son Javier had turned out to be cheap wood. But Santiago was oak, and they had been trying to break him. The next morning I was at my attorney's office when it opened. Richard had read through the original agreement overnight. "It's solid, Frank. Clause 7. The borrower commits to maintaining healthy and respectful family relationships with all family members. Proven violation allows you to revoke with 30 days' notice." And the night of December 24th counts as proven violation? The photos you took are a good start. We'll need Santiago's formal statement too. I thought of what it would cost my grandson to relive all of it, if necessary. Then here's the plan. We file a formal complaint with Family Services. They handle abuse cases and will investigate. That runs on its own track. Meanwhile, I'll prepare the eviction notice to send January 5th. That gives them exactly 30 days. I nodded. Do it all. The Family Services investigator came to my house on January 8th, a woman in her 40s with a kind face and eyes that missed nothing. Santiago had been awake since 6 a.m., even though the appointment wasn't until 10. I found him in the kitchen on his third coffee. Just tell the truth, I told him. That's all. For 2 hours he talked, every insult, every humiliation, every time Diana had made him feel like he didn't belong in his own house. When he got to Christmas Eve, his voice broke. It was so cold, he said quietly. My feet hurt. My hands hurt. I couldn't stop shaking, and I could hear them inside, laughing, eating, like I didn't exist. The investigator looked at the photos on my phone, the timestamp, the temperature, Santiago shaking at the front door, his lips purple. Her expression told me everything I needed to know. This is serious, she said, very serious. January 5th, as planned, the certified eviction notice was sent to the house. By 7:15 p.m., my phone had exploded. 5 calls from Javier, 3 from Diana, 2 from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them. Then, a text from Diana. You can't do this. This house is ours. We'll fight this to the end. I replied, the house is in my name. It always has been. You have 30 days. Javier showed up at my door that evening, alone, red-eyed, rumpled, smelling of whiskey. I let him in. Dad, please, withdraw the notice. Diana's losing it. She says we're going to end up on the street. On your salary, you can rent a decent apartment. You won't be on the street. But the kids are used to that house, their school, their friends. And Santiago was used to having a family that didn't abuse him. Nobody seemed to care about that. Javier put his face in his hands. Dad, I'm begging you, one more chance. I'll put my foot down with Diana. Things will change. How many times have I heard that, Javier? This time is different. It's not different. I gave you that house 10 years ago. 10 years to build a real family. Instead, you let your wife turn your son into a servant. I stood up. Santiago told you. I told you. Your friends hinted at it. You chose not to see. He was quiet for a long time. Then, the worst part, Dad, is that you were right. You were always right. I was so afraid of being alone that I chose to believe Diana's lies. He wiped his eyes. I'm a bad father, a bad son, but I want to fix this, even if it costs me the marriage. I looked at him for a moment. It's never too late to do the right thing, I said, especially when it costs you something. On January 15th, both Javier and Diana were called to the Family Services office. I came with Santiago and my attorney. The social worker leading the meeting was a woman of about 50, with the face of someone who had seen every lie imaginable and was no longer impressed by any of them. Santiago was interviewed first. 2 hours. When he came out, he was pale but lighter somehow. Diana went in wearing her best disguise, conservative dress, natural makeup, perfect hair, the devoted stepmother. She came out 45 minutes later, considerably less composed. Then we were all called in together. Mrs. Cooper, the social worker said to Diana, is it true that on December 24th, you left Santiago outside your home for approximately 2 hours in temperatures of 5 degrees Fahrenheit? It was a punishment, Diana said in a controlled voice. He burned the Christmas dinner. He needed to learn responsibility. Did you consider the weather conditions before applying this punishment? It wasn't that cold, maybe 15 degrees at most, and he was only out there about an hour. The social worker opened a folder. I have the meteorological report from that night, 5 degrees Fahrenheit at 7 p.m., and according to Mr. Delgado's account, Santiago was outside from 5:30. Diana pressed her lips together. The boy exaggerates. He always has. Mr. Delgado has time-stamped photographs showing Santiago shaking with blue lips. Those photos could be manipulated. Mrs. Cooper, the social worker's voice hardened. I'd suggest you stop making baseless accusations. We're here to investigate a serious complaint of abuse. Diana switched tactics. The tears appeared like magic. You don't understand how difficult this has been. Santiago never accepted me as a mother. He was always defiant. Withholding food, the social worker interrupted, because according to his testimony, you served him smaller portions than the younger children. He eats more than the kids. It made sense to Mrs. Cooper. Santiago is an 18-year-old young man in development. His half-siblings are 5 and 3. Of course he needs more food. Diana went silent. And the household chores? Santiago says he was the only one who did them. The little kids can't clean. They're too young. But neither did you. It all fell on Santiago. The room got tense. Then Javier, who had been silent through everything, finally spoke. "It's true," he said quietly. "Everything Santiago says is true. Diana treated him differently. I knew it, and I did nothing." Diana turned to him with fury in her eyes. "What are you saying?" "The truth." Javier looked at her directly, for the first time in a long time. "I'm saying the truth." Diana stood up abruptly. "I'm not sitting here listening to this. This is a circus, a conspiracy from that old man to destroy my family." She grabbed her bag. "Get a lawyer if you want to talk to me again." She stormed out, slamming the door. The social worker exhaled slowly. "Well, that simplifies things." She looked at the three of us. "Gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation. I'll be sending my report to the prosecutor's office. This situation clearly warrants a criminal investigation." Outside in the parking lot, Santiago looked exhausted, but somehow unburdened. Javier stood there, not knowing where to put himself. "Dad," he said finally, "can I come visit? To Saltillo, you and Santiago, not to ask for anything, just to try to fix what I broke." I looked at Santiago. My grandson gave a small nod. "We do barbecue on Sundays," I said. "Come next week." On January 28th, my attorney called. The prosecutor's office had opened a criminal investigation against Diana, domestic abuse and family violence. With the photos, Santiago's testimony, the social worker's report, and Javier's confession, he estimated a 95% chance of conviction. He also told me Diana had tried to hire 3 different attorneys. All 3 refused the case. In legal circles, everyone knew what she had done. Nobody wanted to defend someone who had left a kid out in the cold. "What a shame," I said, feeling no shame whatsoever. February 4th, Javier appeared at my door in Saltillo. Not a Sunday, not barbecue time, 2 suitcases, a face that had been crying. "Dad, can I stay? Just for a few days until I find an apartment." "What happened?" "I told Diana I'm filing for divorce." I let him in. Santiago came down the stairs, saw his father, and hugged him. First time I'd seen them embrace in years. That night over dinner, Javier told us everything. He'd asked for a full divorce and full custody of the 2 little ones. Diana had called him a traitor, said he was destroying the family. How dare he leave her when everything was falling apart? He had reminded her that everything fell apart because of what she did to Santiago. Javier looked at his son. "I don't have words to ask your forgiveness." "Then don't try." Santiago put a hand on his father's shoulder. "What matters is that you're here now." "Do you really forgive me, after everything I didn't do?" "I'm working on it. It won't happen overnight. But yes, eventually I will," Javier cried. Real tears this time, not self-pity, relief. On March 20th, the judge formalized the agreement. Diana received 3 years of probation, mandatory weekly therapy, a restraining order prohibiting her from coming within 300 feet of Santiago for 5 years, and a financial penalty paid to Santiago for emotional damages. No contact with Santiago unless he authorized it in writing. She walked out of the courthouse, pale, hollow, broken. We left through a different door. "Is it really over?" Santiago asked. "Yes, son." I put my hand on his shoulder. "It's really over." That night back home, I made my mother's recipe, slow cooked from scratch. Javier came with the kids. Santiago set the table. For the first time in a very long time, we had a real family dinner. No lies, no masks, no Diana. Just us, imperfect, scarred, still healing, but real. And that, after everything, was the only thing that mattered. After I sold the house in Monterey, I did 3 things with the money. I set aside funds for my own retirement. I set aside a full college fund for Santiago, his tuition, his materials, everything he'd need. And I gave Javier an interest-free loan to buy his own apartment in Saltillo with a signed contract, because I wanted him to learn to manage money responsibly. Javier found a job here. Less money than before, but he's close. The kids are growing up with their grandfather and their big brother. Something is forming that we haven't had in years, a real family. Not perfect. Javier and Santiago are still rebuilding. The little ones are still adjusting. But it's real, without masks, without lies. One afternoon in the workshop, Santiago and I were putting the finishing touches on a chessboard we'd been building together for 4 months. Walnut, cedar, pine, each square perfectly cut and sanded, inlaid by hand. "Grandpa," he said, setting down his sandpaper, "do you regret any of it? Kicking Diana out, forcing Dad to choose?" I thought about it before answering. "I don't regret protecting you, not for a single second. But I do regret not doing it sooner. I regret how long I took to see what was happening." He nodded slowly. "I regret not speaking up sooner too. I kept quiet because I didn't want to cause problems." "We both learned something, son." "Yeah." He picked up his sandpaper again. "I guess we did." We worked in silence for a while. The chessboard took shape beneath our hands, slow, deliberate, perfect. It's May now. 5 months since that Christmas Eve that changed everything. I'm sitting on the porch of my house drinking coffee, watching my grandchildren play in the yard. Sophia is chasing little Mateo with a stick she found. Santiago is with them, helping them build something out of sticks and stones. Javier is inside making lunch. His quesadillas are almost as good as mine. Almost. Mateo runs over and climbs into my lap. "Grandpa, tell me a story." "It's almost lunchtime, buddy. A short one." "All right, a short one." So there on the porch, with my youngest grandchild in my lap and the others leaning in, I tell them a story. Not the real story. They'll be old enough for that someday. I tell them about a carpenter who built houses so beautiful that even the birds wanted to live in them. It's a story my father told me. Now I tell it to my grandchildren. The circle continues. Later, after the dishes are done and the little ones are watching cartoons, Santiago and I bring the finished chessboard into the house and set it on the dining room table where the light hits it perfectly. "Want to play a game?" I ask. We sit down, arrange the pieces, also hand-carved from years ago. We play in silence. Santiago has gotten good fast. "Check," he says after about 15 minutes. "You got me, son. You taught me well," he smiles. "Though I think you let me win." When the game is over and we're putting the pieces away carefully, Santiago says, "You know what, Grandpa? I think this is the best gift I've ever been given. Not the board, the time we spent making it." "For me too, son." That night, long after everyone is asleep, I sit alone on the porch. I think about Diana. She lives with her mother now, works a register at the grocery store, goes to therapy once a week. I don't feel cruel satisfaction. Just justice. Actions have consequences. I think about Javier, how he finally found the courage to be a father, late, but not too late. I think about Santiago, how he survived 2 years of hell and came out the other side. Wounded, yes, but never broken. Never broken. My phone buzzes. A message from my attorney. Confirmed. Diana made her second payment on time. Everything is in order. I set the phone down. The stars are bright over the city tonight, clear and cold and perfect. Tomorrow is Sunday. I'm making barbecue. Santiago is bringing tortillas from the place he likes. Javier is helping with the meat. The kids will play in the yard. We'll be a family. Not a perfect one. We have scars and wounds that are still healing. But a real one. And that, after everything, is the only thing that ever mattered. I go inside, turn off the lights, head to my room. On my nightstand is a photo Santiago gave me last week. All of us in the workshop. Him, Javier, me, the kids. All of us covered in sawdust. All of us smiling. A family. My family. The family I rescued, rebuilt, and watched, against all odds, come back to life. I lie down, and for the first time in years, I sleep deeply. No worries, no fears, no regrets. Because I did what I had to do. I protected who I had to protect. And I got back what was always mine. Not the house, not the money. My family. And that, when all is said and done, is worth more than anything.